I am Camili, a young woman who grew up in the dark alleys of the city. The streets that saw me grow up are surrounded by skyscrapers, where the rich watch from their luxurious penthouses as the misery spreads below. To them, we are invisible. My father, a laborer who worked from sunrise to sunset, lost his job when the factory closed. My mother, always hardworking, does what she can with small cleaning jobs. Even so, we never have enough. I always dreamed of a different life, but opportunities are scarce for those born on the wrong side of the city. Hunger and need led me to paths I never imagined. Stealing is not something I'm proud of, but with a growling stomach and my family in need, I saw no other way. One cold night, while trying to steal food from a poorly lit grocery store, I was caught. My heart raced when the owner, a burly man with a stern look, grabbed me firmly by the arm. Shame and fear mixed inside me. I knew the police could be called, and my already difficult life could become an even bigger nightmare. Then, a young man with a kind gaze and fine clothes approached, breaking the tense silence that had formed. "Let her go, please," he said calmly, handing some bills to the store owner. "I'll pay for this." The store owner hesitated for a moment, looking from the young man to me and back to the money. Finally, he agreed to let me go. I felt a mix of relief and disbelief. I looked at the young man who had saved me from shame and the possibility of being arrested. Confused and grateful, I followed the young man to a bench in the nearby park. He didn't say much on the way, but his presence was comforting. We sat down, and he bought me a simple snack, a gesture that made me realize the generosity behind his initial action. "Why did you do that?" I asked, suspicious, while nibbling on the sandwich. "Aren't you afraid of getting involved?" He looked at me with a soft smile, as if understanding my doubts. "No," he replied, with sincerity in his eyes. "I know how hard it is to live like this, even if it doesn't seem so. I grew up seeing the inequalities of this city, and I always felt that we should help when we can." He introduced himself kindly. "My name is Olavo," and told me his story with simplicity. Olavo came from a wealthy family, but from an early age, he felt disconnected from the world of privileges in which he grew up. While his parents mainly valued status and money, he saw life differently. From a young age, Olavo believed in the importance of kindness and humility, values that shaped his choices over the years. Despite following a business career, his true passion was always helping others. That's how he decided to found an NGO dedicated to supporting underprivileged communities. The organization not only provided education and opportunities, but also sought to create a positive and lasting impact on the lives of those who needed it most. With this mission, Olavo found a greater purpose beyond the borders of his own upbringing. He became a living example of how it is possible to use personal resources and privileges to promote significant changes in society, inspiring everyone around him. It was the beginning of an unlikely friendship. Olavo became not only my support in difficult times, but also my inspiration to fight for a future where no one else would have to live in the shadows of the city. Over time, what was once friendship turned into love, and Olavo asked me to be his girlfriend, and I accepted, and we started dating. To Olavo, Camili was not just a girlfriend, she was his daily inspiration. She challenged him to look beyond the boundaries of his own privileged reality, constantly reminding him of the importance of helping the less fortunate. His commitment to the NGO and his dedication to social causes gained even more meaning with Camili's support and love by his side. Camili, in turn, found in Olavo not only a loving partner, but someone who believed in her when no one else did. He encouraged her to seek new opportunities, supporting her efforts to improve her life and the lives of those around her. With his guidance and support, Camili began to envision a more promising future, where her past struggles could turn into significant achievements. They grew together, learning from each other every day. Olavo brought stability and emotional security to Camili's life, while she taught him the importance of resilience and gratitude for small victories. But not everything was easy. When Olavo decided to introduce me to his family, I realized that the real challenge was yet to come. His parents, Mr. and Mrs. Albuquerque, were cold and distant. From the first moment, it was clear that I was not welcome. "Who is this girl?" Mrs. Albuquerque asked with evident disdain as soon as she saw me. "This is Camili, Mother. My girlfriend," Olavo replied, standing firm in his decision. The sharp looks from Mrs. Albuquerque made it clear that my presence there was an inconvenience to her. Mr. Albuquerque, on the other hand, seemed less hostile, but his silence was as intimidating as his wife's harsh words. The tension was palpable as we sat at the table. I tried to stay calm, but Mrs. Albuquerque's harsh words echoed in my mind. I felt like an intruder in that opulent and formal environment. "And what do you do, Camili?" Mr. Albuquerque asked, breaking the uncomfortable silence that had settled in. "I work at a restaurant in the city center," I replied, trying to convey my sincerity and commitment. The answer didn't seem to satisfy Mrs. Albuquerque, who maintained her rigid and disapproving posture throughout the dinner. The feeling of not belonging was overwhelming, but I knew I had to keep my composure for Olavo's sake. After dinner, Mrs. Albuquerque approached Olavo while I pretended not to hear. "Olavo, dear, do you really think this girl is right for you?" she said in a low tone, but clearly audible. "Yes, Mother. I love Camili, and that won't change," he replied without hesitation. Mr. Albuquerque, who had remained silent until then, finally spoke. "Perhaps we should give her a chance," he said, looking at his wife. "If Olavo sees something special in her, who are we to judge?" Mrs. Albuquerque sighed, clearly unsatisfied, but she said nothing more that night. In the end, as we said our goodbyes, Olavo held my hand and looked into my eyes with determination. "They'll get used to you, Camili. They just need time to understand." I wanted to believe in Olavo's comforting words, but I knew the battle for acceptance was just beginning. The following days were difficult. Olavo's mother did everything to separate us. They organized meetings with young people from high society, trying to distract Olavo, and pressured him to end our relationship. However, Olavo remained by my side. Every time we went out together, it seemed like his mother had planned something to keep us apart. One day, Olavo received an invitation to a gala organized by one of the most influential families in Sao Paulo. His parents insisted that he attend, claiming it was an excellent opportunity to make important business connections. I knew this was an excuse to bring him closer to other young women they deemed more suitable for him. "I don't need to attend these parties to make connections, Mother. My business is doing well," Olavo argued firmly. "It's not just about business, Olavo. It's about getting involved with people who share our lifestyle," Mrs. Albuquerque retorted, in a tone that admitted no reply, and Olavo gave in to the pressure and went to the party. After the party, he came to meet me at my house. "I love you, Camili," he said that night, holding my hands, "and I won't let anyone separate us." Besides these social attempts, obstacles began to arise in my professional life. My boss at the restaurant, a fair and honest man, called me one day for a serious conversation. "Camili, I received an anonymous call suggesting that you're involved in dubious activities. I know that's not true, but it's starting to cause problems here," he said, visibly uncomfortable. I knew this call came from Olavo's parents, trying to discredit me and distance me from him. The pressures were increasing every day, and I felt the weight of distrust and prejudice. "Maybe we should break up," I suggested to Olavo, with tears in my eyes. "I don't want to see you suffering because of me." "No, Camili. We're stronger together, and we'll get through this," Olavo insisted, pulling me into a hug. The community that Olavo helped began to notice how much he was being pressured. In a gesture of gratitude, they organized a support meeting, showing Olavo and his family the positive impact he had made on so many people's lives. It was at this moment that Mr. Albuquerque, seeing the mobilization and the community's affection for his son, began to reconsider. He realized that Olavo was indeed making a difference. Gradually, his heart began to soften. But Mrs. Albuquerque was still inflexible. She couldn't accept that her son was with someone from such a different social class. Her pride and preconceived notions about Camili's origins blinded her to the genuine love between them. Months passed, and Olavo remained determined. The bond between him and Camili grew stronger, even in the face of adversity. One day, after a long argument with his mother, Olavo made a difficult decision. He packed his bags and left the family's mansion. "I'm going to live with Camili," he declared, firm in his choice. "If you can't accept her, then we can't live under the same roof." It was a turning point for Mrs. Albuquerque. She watched her son leave, her heart heavy with the weight of her rigid stance. Deep down, she knew she was losing him. After days of reflection, she decided to visit the small apartment where Olavo and Camili had begun to build their life together. When she knocked on the door, she was greeted by a smiling Olavo and a nervous but welcoming Camili. "May I come in?" she asked, her voice softer than ever before. That night, in that humble apartment, they shared a simple meal and an honest conversation. Mrs. Albuquerque began to understand that her son's happiness was more important than her own social prejudices. She realized that Camili, despite her origins, was someone special who had captured her son's heart. The path to reconciliation was not